Welcome, everybody, to Cinema Royale. I am Travis Hobson of PunchRunCritics.com. And on this week's show, what else could we possibly talk about? It's Barbenheimer weekend. It's Barbenheimer, right? Is that what they're calling it? It's Barbenheimer?
Barbenheimer.
Barbenheimer. And joining me on this episode is Cortland Jacoby, who writes for the site, of course. She actually wrote both of our reviews for these films this week. I did see both. I had to talk about them on Channel 7. Only reason is this way, I was supposed to be in San Diego, and I'm not. But I was not going to take the reviews away from her. And she did a good job. So I'm happy to have her here. Let's talk. Yes, let's talk Barbenheimer. And at the end of this, we're also going to run through our favorite 5 performances by Margot Robbie, Ryan Gosling, and Cillian Murphy. So that's what we're going to do at the end of this. So we'll hold on to that to the end. All right, let's start with Barbie. Let's start with Barbie.
Okay.
Let's start with Barbie. I don't know what people were expecting when this movie was first announced. There have been multiple attempts to get a Barbie movie off the ground. We've talked about them plenty of times on the site. One with Anne Hathaway, another one that might have had like Amy Schumer, a bunch of different versions. And Greta Gerwig came along, and she's the one who ended up doing it and writing it along with Noah Baumbach. And I think when you got those people involved, you have to expect it to be a certain kind of movie that is not going to be a straight up Barbie movie, and it's not. I actually went and saw it again yesterday with some friends who hadn't seen it, and packed crowd. In fact, all the showings of it were sold out everywhere yesterday. We were lucky to get into one at like 6:00 at the Showplace Icon. Yeah. And I absolutely loved it the second time even more, I think. Maybe even more. Although I don't think I laughed as much the second time. Mm-hmm. I think I appreciated the movie more for what it says and what it doesn't do. Like it's a movie with a message, but it's not a movie that forgets to be entertaining and fun also. Because it is definitely those things.
Yes, it's entertaining and fun. I think as its target demographic as a woman in this world, I think that it definitely nails its message kind of from the jump. I also just saw it again a second time, literally a couple hours ago. I took my mom. And to see someone who, grew up with pretty much the first iteration of the Barbie dolls, she had the growing up Skipper doll. I didn't know that. She had the doll that when you moved the arm, her boobs got big. Yeah. So we're talking like older Barbies. And to see somebody from that generation watch this movie and go from like holding my hand crying to absolutely keeled over in laughter, really did have, it was cool. It was just a really, really, really cool thing. And I think that it has an overall appeal that is not only appealing to different genders, but to different generations in a way that, I don't necessarily know if other IP like that is doing it.
Yeah, so we're not going to get into too much of the story details here in case there's someone out there who hasn't seen it already, which based on the box office is probably not that many people. So we did $55 million domestic, $337 million worldwide. It's the highest grossing opening weekend for a female director ever. So big props to Greta Gerwig. Good luck to her in her next couple of Narnia movies that she's going to be doing, because she ain't going to be doing no Barbie sequel. I don't think she's not going to have time. I kind of hope they don't make one. I was actually discussing this with a friend of mine.
I'm good with just this one, yeah.
Right, but you and I both know that there will be one, whether we want there to be or not, or whether or not there should be. But the movie finds Barbie, facing kind of an existential crisis, but she is, and so is Ken. Like, they're both facing an existential crisis. And it's interesting because in both cases, they're facing this crisis because of how they were designed,
right?
Because of what they were designed to be. In her case, she's designed to represent the best of what women can be. Basically, but reality does not reflect that. Reality on our end does not reflect that. So when that part of reality starts to bleed over into Barbie land, well, it affects her as well. And then she has to go into the real world and figure out what the problem is and come back and fix it. And then you get Ken, played by Ryan Gosling, who was extraordinary in this movie, by the way. He's
Oh, so good.
so great. The
Yeah.
Kennedy is real in this movie, for real. He's so good. He's good, although upon second viewing, I have a brand new appreciation for Kingsley Benadir as his version of Ken. it's,
Oh my God, yeah.
it's
And I wish
especially
that we
true,
had more of him as well.
right? It's especially like true if you're like watching him in Secret Invasion, where he's like the villain, the scroll villain, and he's such a bad guy. And then you watch him in this, he's so timid and so everything. Not
Well,
quite Alan
Kingsley-
timid.
no, not Alan Timid. I will say that Kingsley Benadir just wants to take over the world in both of these movies, like as a Ken, which we learned about later, and then also as Gravik. You just brought up Alan, played by Michael Cera, which I thought he was brilliant and perfectly used. If not, I wanted a little bit more Alan. I thought he was great. He is Ken's buddy, and he wears all the same clothes that Ken.
Ken's close
Um,
to him. That's his thing.
that's
Ken's
his
close
thing.
to him too.
He just wants to be close to Ken. So, yeah.
Yeah, but it is interesting though, because like you said, these characters are built how they're designed to be, which puts the Kens in a really interesting position, in the opening scenes of the movie, because they really only exist to be with Barbies. Like
Yeah.
that's really the only thing they're there for.
To serve Barbies. Yeah.
Right. So what happens when that's not what they can be? Like what happens when they have to like be on their own and figure things out? There's a great scene in the movie for me when America Ferrera's character says something, and she's like, it's like the 15th century when they were exposed to smallpox and there's no defense. And when these guys learn about the patriarchy, and it just bowls them over, and they just they go full blown toxic. The way that Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach, who co-wrote it with her, the way they reimagine these characters and look at them and what their purpose was and fashion it for today, I think is so perfect. That's the thing I think I appreciate the most about this movie. How they came up with the idea to make Alan who he is, or how they came up with the idea for the weird Barbie. I had a friend who came with me who totally was that girl, who was the one who really just fucked up all her Barbies. And that's who she was. And she, interestingly, she was literally the only woman at the theater who wore all black. Like she wore not an ounce of pink, not a shred of pink. She wore all black. She's the only one there. And she's totally the girl who destroyed her Barbies. But the way they just thought through all these different the evolution of Barbie over the years, the way they thought through every bit of it, I think is probably the thing I appreciated most seeing it a second time.
I think what Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach, the task that they had, I think, was a lot different than like someone in the Marvel universe taking on a property, or even like how Phil Lord and Chris Miller had with adapting the Lego movie. Barbie has baggage. The whole brand has baggage. Margot Robbie in interviews has
Margot
said,
Martindale would have been interesting.
I would have loved to see her as a Barbie. Margot Robbie has said in interviews, Barbie has been ahead of her time, but she's also been behind her times. And I think that's a really great way to think about it. She was an astronaut in space before even men were in space. She owned a dream house before women were able to own their own credit cards. But you also have the body standards, and you have, again, a bunch of men making these decisions about a female doll, and therefore through the male gaze. So they had so much baggage, and instead of completely, pulling the wool over the audience's eyes and acting like Barbie's a great property and there's nothing wrong, they decided to embrace it and to show the weird ones, and to show, they had Sugar Daddy Ken and Magic Earring Ken, who is wearing a male sex toy. They released a Barbie doll with a male sex toy hanging around his neck. And they included that in the movie, and it's brilliant and wonderful and weird. And I think this is how you make a movie that has such a complicated history with American women, especially, and to honor not only the brand's past, but what we've been through as women with this doll. We've burned it, we've thrown it,
Yeah,
we've
yeah,
hated it.
yeah.
I have been the preteen at the table calling Barbie a fascist. I've been that kid too. So, but I've also been the 6-year-old, completely in my own little world, playing with Skipper and playing with, I had Beast Ken from like, Beauty and the Beast. I had
Oh
like
God, there was a Beast
Ken.
Ken? I didn't
There's
even know that.
Ken. He was the only Ken I had.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been all of that. So I think it really does honor the source material and acknowledges its past in a way that I don't think any IP has. Like Marvel hasn't done that. Lego, I mean, granted, not a lot of them have the same
They
amount
don't
of.
have the same kind of, yeah. They don't have the same.
Well, Marvel might. There's some comics might, but I think that they've done such a spectacular job, and to bring it back around to some of the performances, I think at the heart of this film you have Margot Robbie, who does such a beautiful job playing such a complicated character that could have been very, very one-sided, and it's not, and it's her performance absolutely is not.
Well, she's really great in this. Everybody in the movie for their whatever their roles were really good. I even like Will Ferrell, and I'm actually not a big fan of him.
Just the right amount of Will Ferrell.
Yeah, just right, exactly, just enough. Not that much different than his Lego movie character
Yeah.
either. But he's just weird enough that I really liked him. And good on Mattel for letting them tell this particular story. They could have told a very old-fashioned typical Barbie movie like you would have seen in the straight to DVD Barbie movies that are out there. They could have told any one of those, and they didn't. They told one that takes on the doll's history, warts and all, every bit of it, and even acknowledges the many problems of Barbie's creator. So there's
Twice they talk about tax evasion twice.
right. There's a lot of things in this movie that are probably going to fly over the heads of most kids. That's one of the things I was stressing in a lot of my comments about the film over the week, is that I don't know how many kids are going to get all of the humor.
Right.
Good that they're there to hear what it has to say, especially America Ferrera's thing at the end, where a second time it's even better. Brought a lot of people to tears in this theater I was at yesterday. It's good for them to hear that, even if I think a lot of humor is going to go over their head. They're not going to understand what it means when Barbie gets called a fascist. They're not going to understand what the patriarchy means necessarily, and what the impact of it is. They're not going to understand all of that, but they're going to get a lot of it, but not everything.
I think this movie is perfect for kids starting to not play with Barbies anymore. Like, I feel like enjoy the doll while you can, play with the doll while you can, and then you can watch this movie when you've grown up a little bit and are starting to like integrate more into the real world. And I gotta say, that's really ballsy to make like a movie about a kid's toy and its prime demographic not be children. Like, that's really, really ballsy, and I think it's definitely paying off, as you just mentioned, in the box office numbers. So yeah, I think for me, I agree with you that the second watching that America Ferrera speech the second time hits better. We talked about this coming out of the theater, that some of the stuff in the real world didn't land as hard for us as it should. For me, and I say this in my review, America Ferrera's character, who is a human, she's not a doll, doesn't have a lot of flashback scenes. We don't know a huge amount about her life. We see a little bit, but not a lot, not enough for that speech to land as hard as it should, I think.
Right. There's a lot going on in the movie, though, also.
Oh my God, so much. And they do.
And we're left to imply a lot of this stuff for her is that she's just a regular woman dealing with the regular pressures that we can understand it, even if they're not verbalized.
Right.
And I think that's what they're just assuming we can get it.
Yeah.
So I get why they didn't do it. There's probably a scene somewhere on the floor where we do see more, and it probably not necessary. It's probably not necessary.
I don't know. I felt like the first time I watched it, it didn't have the right emotionality for me. And then the second time I watched it, it did. And part of that was because I was watching it with my mom. So I think that might, I don't know. For me, I needed that that scene. But I also think too that because this movie was so heavily marketed, especially in the last 2 weeks, and yes, I work in media, so I do see a lot of trailers and interviews and stuff for my job, that I feel like if I had seen less, I would have enjoyed it more.
I think the marketing of this was brilliant. They focused on the stars. I think most people walking in didn't know what they were walking into. They probably did not. Almost every single person I know who's a casual moviegoer who went to go see Barbie came out of it saying the same thing. It's a lot deeper than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
It's a lot more than I thought it was going to be. I think a lot of people thought it was going to be all Barbie dream houses and dance parties, and it was just going to be celebrities doing funny things dressed as Ken and Barbie, and that's what they thought the movie was going to be.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's and most of those people have no idea who Greta Gerwig is anyway. They don't care. No. So they don't know like we do. Like Greta Gerwig's doing Barbie. Oh, this won't be your typical Barbie movie. We know, but your average person doesn't, and they don't care, and they just want to go in there expecting to see one thing, and they got another, and all of them were very pleasantly surprised by that. So that's a good thing, and it's rare when that sort of stuff happens where people don't get what they expect and they come out happier for it. That doesn't happen often anymore, so that's good.
What did you think of the dancing and the musical numbers?
The dance number at her house at the beginning is one of my favorite dance numbers. It's almost as good as the Boogie Nights mid scene dance. It's almost perfect. I love it. The dance at the end between the guys is also really good too.
I think Barbie might have best song. I'm hoping it does. I'm hoping we get Ryan Gosling.
You can see Ryan Gosling perform it live.
Yeah. If we could just talk about the passion that Ryan Gosling brings to this movie. It's genius. Greta Gerwig, in an interview with Rolling Stone, said it was like some combination of Marlon Brando meets Gene Wilder, meets John Barrymore, meets John Travolta. And I think that's like completely correct with the things he was pulling from. There is so much Willy Wonka and then also a lot of Danny Zuko from Grease.
Yeah.
And I think he just brings so much commitment and then like just unhinged enthusiasm, and I think this is exactly what the part needs. And I think he's one of the best parts of the movie, and I think he, though at times somewhat overshadows Margot Robbie, I think that like it is, it's what the movie needs at times.
Well, let's be fair. After a certain point, Barbie's story becomes it's not like it's flat or anything. It's just that it's not as showy.
Yes.
Like it's not as showy as his is. Like he gets all the ridiculous stuff, like, oh my God, like getting obsessed with horses and giant vehicles and stupid stuff like that. And when he turns toxic, he gets all the flashy stuff. He gets to be the idiot, basically, for a lot of the movie. And her story becomes it's just not as showy. It's more dramatic, so it's different for her. Conversation I had earlier today about this movie too. What do you think about the idea that at the end, without giving too much away about the movie, in case there are people who haven't watched it, what do you think about the idea that the Kens are arguably worse off at the end of the movie than they were at the beginning? I think they are. They might be able to. They might be better in some ways, but in terms of their position, they're worse.
Well, they do have a lower circuit court position, which is something they didn't have before.
Well, they had nothing before. So,
and Helen Mirren does say that one day the Kens will have as much as women do now. So, I mean, I see your point. I also think that, like, if the worst thing about Barbie Land is that the Kens are ignored, I'd much rather take that over, like, the real oppression women are facing across this world.
I'm just talking about in comparison to the beginning of the movie when, it is Barbie Land. So, of course, the Barbies are the thing. They are what's important.
Travis, they figured out who they are. They learned they could be without Barbie and be okay. And I have to say, self-reliance is a great trait. So I would disagree with you.
I feel like one Ken figured that out and the rest of them did not.
Everybody's on a journey.
They had not gone through the same journey that he did. So I don't think that Dave necessarily figured that out. But also the Barbies are in a position of knowing they are stronger and knowing that the men are less important and they seemed like they were more willing to wield that power at the end of the movie too, which makes me feel like the Kens are in a much worse position than they were at the beginning of the movie.
I
And
mean, again, President Issa Rae, which I would love for
Barbie,
that to be a real thing.
if you
President Issa
get
Rae,
Barbie 2 Ken's Revenge, I hope y'all are ready. I hope y'all are ready for it.
Electric Boogaloo. I look, I think that I would actually watch it if it was starring Kingsley Benadir, because I don't know if they would be able to get Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling back. But
I want Simu Liu to come back. Also,
yeah. I don't necessarily know if they I don't necessarily agree with you, actually. I think that
that's why I asked the question.
yeah, I don't. I think that I can see your point, but again, like what is worse and what is better is objective.
To be fair, look, the guys deserve the place they're in because of what they do in the movie. Although, granted, they also didn't realize just how bad they were being. Because
to be fair, we're not seeing like them in front of the Barbie Supreme Court going to jail. Like, they got off kind of scot-free, and then they also got representation in the government. So, like, I would say that.
I just don't want to come back and find out the Kens are being treated like second-class citizens. That's not right. It's not fair.
Again, the worst atrocities Barbie's pulled against Ken in Barbie Land was that
if I'm asked to be under the spell of Margot Robbie and Issa Rae and Emma Mackey, I'm not complaining. I'm happy in where I'm at. I'm not gonna say a word. Y'all want to boss me around? Okay, I'm cool with it. So I'd be a perfect Ken. So anyway, Barbie has been a gigantic hit so far this weekend. I can't wait to see how it does in the long run. It looks like it's going to be the biggest movie of the summer by far. It's already crushing Mission Impossible, which really got pounded this week. Oppenheimer did really well this weekend too, $80 million and about 150 worldwide or something like that. So let's move on and talk about Oppenheimer.
Let's talk about a different kind of patriarchy.
Yes, totally different kind of movie here. I'll admit I'm going to go see it again tomorrow. So I wish I could have had time to kind of withhold my comments about it until then, but we're going to do it now. Oppenheimer is Christopher Nolan's film about J. Robert Oppenheimer, the man who led the Manhattan Project, which led to the creation of the atomic bomb. So obviously not the same as Barbie, which I'm still amazed by the people I know who went to see both back to back. And I'm like, I don't even know how you did it. Like, yeah. I don't know if my brain could handle it. My friend Ronnie, who came with me to the movie yesterday, did that. He saw Oppenheimer in the morning and then went with to see Barbie a little bit later. And I was like, I don't know.
How?
Yeah, afterwards he was like, yeah, I wish I hadn't done that actually. So yeah.
Well, and it's because of what you were talking about. People were going into Barbie thinking that it was going to be like, fun celebrities running around in cool costumes. And it's a lot deeper and more emotionally taxing than that. And then you have something that is obviously more taxing, which is, Oppenheimer about the atomic bomb. So
my problem going into Oppenheimer was that I wasn't sure that Oppenheimer himself is that interesting. It's just the thing that I always get into when it comes to biopics is like, is the thing they did interesting or is the person interesting? A biopic needs to be more than just what they do. It needs to be is the person himself. Like if they didn't do that thing, would they still be somebody you want to see a movie about? I'm still not convinced that Oppenheimer is after watching the movie.
Yeah, I agree.
But I'm convinced that Christopher Nolan loves him. Christopher Nolan clearly clearly idolizes this guy to some extent. And I think there's a lot of hero worship that goes on in this movie for him, which is interesting because the thing that he does is objectively awful.
Yeah.
And no one seems to be able to acknowledge that and still idolize him, which is interesting, which is also kind of fascinating to me. I think I'm more fascinated by Oppenheimer than I actually like it. Like I'm more intrigued by it than I actually like the movie. Like I think when I look at it and the things about it I really dig about it, his performance in particular is great. All the other ones I feel like they could have cast just about anybody and they didn't really matter because he's such the dominating figure in the movie. There's so many A-listers spread around that very few of them have enough to do that you couldn't have just cast anybody. and
I
the
agree with
technical aspects, which is no one's the one person who can make a biopic like this worthy of seeing on IMAX. It looks amazing. It as bad as Tenet sounded a few years ago, that's how good Oppenheimer sounds. The sound design, the sound editing is beautiful.
brilliant.
I can't wait to see it again for those reasons.
Yeah.
But the story itself is it's fine. It's tense, and the build up to the actual bomb is well done, really well done. I'm just not sure that the rest of the movie needed to happen for as long as it does, which I think again goes to the hero worship and the self-indulgence of the movie.
I'm going to push back about what you said about the performances. I think Robert Downey Jr. gives a pretty sneakily good performance.
He's good. He's really good. He, like I said, there are very few who have roles that are worthy of the actors who are in them. His is one.
I would argue Florence Pugh, though I wanted more of her, and we'll probably talk about her character in general. I thought that she did a really, really great job as well, as his mistress, Jean Chatlock. I didn't know much about Louis Strauss before going into this film. So going in kind of cold and then seeing kind of the progression of that character, I thought Robert Downey Jr. handled it brilliantly.
Yeah.
I don't know what movie Matt Damon is in. It's sort of in like the good old boy America like version of this movie. He feels a little bit too broad for a Nolan picture. Emily Blunt,
he's a bit too growly for me in this movie. I'm like, what is he doing? It didn't feel right. It felt like he's the wrong person for that role.
Yeah.
Like somebody else should have done it.
Especially because, you have other people that I do feel fit better in other parts. I think Emily Blunt, what she's doing in as Kitty Oppenheimer, though I wish again she did more. I think that she, did her best with what the role she was given. If you're like a film person like us, there are so many people from other things in this that you're like, oh, this guy, oh God, that guy. I gotta give a shout out to David Krumholtz. I really loved his performance.
David Krumholtz. We talked about how he always has that kind of old-timey professor look now, like in everything.
Well, now he does,
everything he does now. He's always got those glasses, which I think are his now. Like I think those are his glasses, and he just brings them to set like everywhere he goes, and that's what they have him wear.
I would love to shout out Ludwig Göransson, who did the music in this film. There's some amazing stuff with violin. I fell in love with that soundtrack, and I mean, this sound design is brilliant as well. As you brought up, that will probably be Oscar nominated.
Story going to have a ton of technical awards.
I will also shout out Barbie will probably have a bunch of technical awards as well.
Production design for sure for Barbie.
Production, costumes, hair, song, Gosling. Anyway,